Hello, my friends. Let's find out what happens in Chapter 14 of Mr. Penguin and the Lost Treasure. Chapter 14, A Secret Behind the Waterfall. A full minute passed and nothing happened. No fall, no sharp teeth, no gigantic chomping jaws. Instead, Mr. Penguin felt himself moving ever so slowly downward in a slightly juddery, mechanical fashion. He dared himself to open one eye. Below him, the alligators were still circling, and Miss Bones and Montague were still gripping onto him. Further up, Mr. Penguin couldn't believe what he saw. The water on either side of him was parting like an enormous pair of soggy curtains, and a rocky platform appeared in between. Mr. Penguin looked at Colin to see if he knew what was going on. "I think this branch might actually be a lever," he wrote on his pad. Mr. Penguin watched as the platform slid slowly out from behind the waterfall and came to a grinding stop just under Montague's feet. The gigantic man stepped gently down onto it. "Well, don't just stand there with your mouth open," cried Miss Bones. "Help me!" Montague plucked her down from where she was dangling and then caught Mr. Penguin and placed him onto the platform beside Miss Bones. Colin quickly untangled Mr. Penguin's satchel from the branch lever and lowered himself down on a web to join the gang. The balcony-like platform led to the entrance of a cave. They all shuffled inside to dry off and gather themselves. "Phew!" panted Mr. Penguin. That was lucky. We were almost lunch." That made him remember his lunch, so he checked his satchel to see how his sandwich was holding up after that unexpected splash in the river. It was slightly soggy on the edges, but it would do. Mr. Penguin popped the satchel over his shoulder and gave it a cheerful pat. "Right," he said. "What shall we do now? Go back to the museum and dry off?" "Go back to the museum," Miss Bones cried, emptying river water out of her pumps. "But we haven't found the treasure yet." Mr. Penguin's beak fell open. Surely she was joking. "Won't the O'Houlihan brothers have got it by now? They'll be halfway down near the Park Avenue." Of course, Mr. Penguin was a little bit disappointed that they'd been beaten to the treasure, but also quite relieved. That business with the alligators had been absolutely terrifying, and all he wanted to do now was sit somewhere warm, dry, and safe and eat his sandwich. Surely he wouldn't have anything to put in his piggy bank, but maybe that would be okay. Colin and I can do something else, he thought. We could re-advertise ourselves as gentle adventurers and only solve safe, easy problems. He looked at Miss Bones and quickly realized that going somewhere dry and warm for a lunch break wasn't going to happen. She was wringing out her cardigan with her mouth set in a very determined line. "We must find that treasure," she said firmly. "This museum depends on it." She was probably right, thought Mr. Penguin. They'd come this far. It would be silly to give in now and miss the chance of a handsome reward. And they hadn't been in the water that long. Maybe they could still beat the O'Houlihan brothers to it. He pulled out the map from his satchel and ran his flipper over the dotted red line. He gasped and looked upward, then back at the map. "Miss Bones," he cried, grinning his biggest, beakiest grin. "I think we might be in luck. If this cave goes where I think it does, it should lead us directly to where the treasure is hidden. I think we've stumbled upon a secret shortcut." Miss Bones threw her shoes back on and leapt to her feet. "Then what are we waiting for?" Colin and Mr. Penguin led the others through the gloomy cave. "If my calculations are correct," said Mr. Penguin after several minutes, "the treasure should be around this bend." They squeezed around the tight rocky corner one at a time and shuffled into the chamber beyond. Mr. Penguin blinked. There in front of them, in two huge treasure chests, were thousands and thousands of gold coins. Glittering among them were diamonds and rubies and sapphires, each the size of one of Montague's fists, as well as gold crowns, silver tiaras, emerald bracelets, and necklaces made from pearls as big as ping-pong balls. "Look at it all," said Mr. Penguin in awe. He hardly dared to breathe. "Isn't it just beautiful?" But before he could say anything else, he felt a sudden dull wallop on the back of his head. The force threw him to the ground, and everything went black. All right. right, we'll find out what happens in chapter 15 tomorrow.